So we have asked Ying Zhu from ReachLaw to give her views about how the joint applications. Word is yours.
All right. Okay. So thank you for the introduction. So I was asked to give some examples, share some experience on joint downstream users applications. Just a short introduction. I'm representing ReachLaw, a consultancy specialized in REACH and other chemical regulations. We have been, I have been personally working on authorization applications since 2012, I think. We have made quite a few numbers of downstream user specific applications, and then a few joint downstream user applications, and also one broad use definition kind of upstream application. So, I've seen all these through the decision-making process as well. First, I would like to ask people why you make a joint downstream users application and how you organize it. So we have heard a lot about the balance between the plus and minuses for single downstream user applications. They are usually very welcomed because they are specific. Applicant usually is able to provide rather complete data set. However, it has relatively costly for a single company to go through that process. On the contrary, they brought up certainty, both from, well, mainly from the decision-making point of view. And then on the contrary, on the other side of the balance, we see broad use definition upstream application. They are cost-effective. However, quite often you come with heterogeneous group of companies to cover. Their situations are not homogeneous. It's complex. That's what has been described quite often with the word complex. And quite often you do not have that kind of data set that is complete and detailed enough. And that brings a high level of uncertainty for the decision making, for the decision makers and also for the results. And in my view, a joint downstream user application is there to kind of filling the gap. So I think that the formation of downstream user consortia often makes sense for the purpose of cost sharing, of course, especially if now the application fee structure will change. And also there is an important aspect of pooling knowledge as well as data, because as a consultant, we have to sometimes for the analysis of alternative part, you need to be specific, scientific, technical. Sometimes we find you get a pool of knowledge from different companies. If it were only a single company, maybe the information that we could collect is much less. And also data, especially from the monitoring exposure data collection point of view, there are sometimes it's possible to pull them together in case of lack of data. But it doesn't come without any boundaries, which I will illustrate later on with an example. And then, of course, you represent a unified industry voice if it's from one single industry sector. So we see there's a lot of benefit for downstream users to jointly apply. However, you still want to have a strong application. You cannot just include anyone in the consortia. It doesn't make sense either. So it is important that a homogeneous and manageable group is formed. They have to be connected by the common desire to obtain authorization. they should share similar use. They have to have the same use, basically. They have to share the similar substitution and or validation requirements that applies to all of them similarly, and then they should somehow have similar socio-economic situations. I don't mean impact only, but also non-use scenarios, for example. And I like Eka, I think in Thierry's presentation, he showed those triangles, but I always show these pyramids. So I see, you can apply single downstream, you can have application by one users or a group of users, or you can have end user driven application from bottom up. And of course, you also have the top-down supplier-driven application. And today we were focusing on the two, which was in the middle. So the first example we tried with a joint downstream user application was it was a group of Finnish companies. Through their industry association, they came to us for help, and because they, the knowledge at that time was much less. It was 3 years ago, so we started by asking them to answer a number of qualitative questions on these 5 areas. What was on the presentation, and based on the result, we see that. You see there are 5 companies. What make them homogeneous is basically their business model. They are service providers. And because of this, their alternative substitution view, or their forecast for substitution is similar. On contrary, there are a couple of companies that making specific product for specific industries. For them, in our view, the alternative situation is much clearer, or very different at least, from a service provider. And because of that reason, we grouped the 5 companies together, even though that they don't have the same process. Most of them are have a manual process, but one do have automatic process. And the way to deal with it is that when you have different processes in the CSR, you basically would just have to present data set on both processes. And in this case, we actually had information on each one of the downstream users, which helped a lot, because in this case, the social economic benefit versus the benefits versus risks in the continued use situation was not that high. And in that case, we couldn't afford any uncertainties related to the data. So fortunately, we had that data there. So I think at this point, what I would like to say is that you cannot, either you have the data all there, or to reduce uncertainty, or then you would have to have a really high social economic benefit versus the risks to counterbalance the uncertainty in the CSR. So this is one way we organize, by doing a scoping study and putting companies together based on very strong AOA arguments which they share. And that was the route for everything else. And then we had another example, which was, this is basically an end-user driven task force where this group of companies, the space industries, they are connected by very unique geopolitical restraints, which defines their common view on the timeline for substitution and non-use scenarios and their impacts. Even though there are 2 groups of companies making 2 groups of products, still, because of this very strong, unique industry specificity, it is possible to build a very strong argument why they need authorization. And even though this application was never filed, we did use this dossier to help one company in the sector to apply for their specific use. And in that opinion we received, the committee gave credit to the fact that we described the industry specificity, which gave them confidence that this is the case. So this is an example of downstream user joined together to form a unified industry voice, and which is now convened now to the decision-making side and being accepted. So I think this shows that it has achieved its goals. Then we had also, basically there's also another way how you organize it, is that you have a group of downstream users, the information was collected at their level, the dossier was made for them, but you then ask their upstream player to apply. So in the authorities' view, this is upstream application, but indeed, this is the way we are making it is no difference from a joint downstream users application. I say this is a different kind of upstream application because we have specified, dedicate. We know exactly who are the downstream users are, and there's a limited number of that. Versus broad use definition upstream application, which usually cover a large number of downstream users, which does not have face to it, every one of them. So there are different ways how you organize, depends on different customer requirements to us, basically what they ask for, and we try to use what it is available, try to build a strong enough case for them. I think then when going to the details, I think one thing is most crucial to me is about data representativeness when you have a group of applicants. So this is mostly, this issue comes up in the CSR. And I think in addition to talk about data representativeness, I want to talk about data kind of completeness and representativeness. By data completeness, I mean that you, it's preferred, it's the best that you have different kinds of measurements. You have not just the biomonitoring, but you also have personal measurement. You have static sampling. You have data on the environmental emissions. Because what we have seen, the committee, when they make the decisions, if you have limited number of data points, then they look at other types of data to see whether they confirm your estimation or not. That's why different data will help to complement each other. And also another thing is, of course, what has already been said, that the contextual information is very important. This is the decision, I mean, the rapporteurs are judging whether this data is relevant or not. By contextual information, we mean, for example, if I have biomonitoring data, what this guy has been doing during that day, what tasks, which data, which task this data related to. This is one example. Another example is that how far away the static sampling was taken from the source, the point of source, just to see whether this is relevant. So these are the two things to make data complete. And then when you have a group of data, then you also have to be able to demonstrate that the data you are showing is representative for the whole group of downstream users. I think I wrote here most wanted, but I think the most wanted, of course, is you have complete data set on everyone, and then you don't need to have this discussion on representativeness. But usually we are not that lucky that we have the luxury of that. So what you aim at is that you would have complete data set on at least one or some of the sides, and then you have a very good justification for why this is representative for the rest of the team members. The less wanted is that you don't have complete data set on some sites, but for example, you have biomonitoring from 3 sites, and then you have air sampling from another 4 companies. If they can confirm each other, sometimes it works, because we have seen in the opinion which they say that this brings uncertainty. However, since the levels are the same, the conclusion was that this uncertainty concern is low. So there you see that you have opportunity when you have a group of companies, but this doesn't come with you can put anyone's information together. There are 2 conditions. One is that they have to have really good justification why they are representative for all the members in the group. Second of all, they have to be on the same level of risk level, which clearly shows, well, at least gives you an indication that this is probably right. And I think what you don't want is that you don't have a complete data set on any of the sites or together, and then you don't have a good justification for representativeness. And next, I would like to show you, just to give you something visual. So this is a case. It's a dyeing operation in the textile company, which you can see everything is closed. There are fences on that area where the dyeing process is taking place. It's completely automated. You see the white. First, it was white. It's lifted by robots, and then it put into the tank in the third picture. And then after a while, the dyed yarn was taken out. It's blue now. So everything was completely closed, or not closed, but this is automated batched process, which there's no people are not allowed to go near to it. So you would think that things are very well under control. And then we have another company. You can see that similar thing, but you need the people who are putting the yarns to the hook and then open it. And so it's kind of manual. And intuitively, you wouldn't put these 2 together. But however, the thing is that even this company with manual process, they have a completely automated closed dosing dispenser. So everything related to the Chrome 6 process was automated closed. Before the worker opens the tank, there is a reduction reaction in the tank. So all the remaining Chrome 6 was already reduced to Chrome 3. Because of that, you have a very strong argument of everything. All these companies, manual or automatic, good, I mean, fancy or less fancy, their risk level is the same. And this is the case where we do not have complete data set on any one of the sites. We have some data on some sites, some other data on the other sides, and the rapporteurs accepted that they can be looked together because there's an underlining point that they should be representative to each other. And that's how these things work out. And of course, this I talked about only about the representativeness of data in CSR. In SEA, they also ask about data representativeness. However, I think as economists, they are very used to simplification modeling. So I think they usually accept. Okay, so that was the data thing. And for the confidentiality, I think You should become transparent to reduce uncertainty. Of course, most sensitive issues are the potential alternatives and profit and loss information. So either you don't do it together, and then you don't need to reveal your potential alternatives. And then for the financial information, you don't necessarily to supply them. Maybe you will supply them when it's really needed. So just a quick word about lessons learned. I think I have always thought that authorization is about the users, and that's why downstream users need to play the central role. And there are different ways to get organized jointly. I think I have agreed to do anything but to combine two companies which have different views on the substitution prospect. That's something I hold on to, that you should not do it together if you don't agree on that. Then you should be homogeneous on other things. And if you do not, you are not homogeneous on the other aspects, you have to consider the data completeness and the representativeness for each scenario in your application. Makes it more complex, but it's doable. So that's about what I've learned. Thank you.